Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of H.A.Robert's philosophy, and we have started discussing about the second chapter from the H.A.Robert, that is the Introduction to the Study of Homoeopathy. While writing this specific chapter, he has introduced homeopathy and he is introducing the concepts of homeopathy in detail in comparison with the allopathy. He explains over there, it is the pathy which is based upon the treatment of the individual and not as a group practice. Here you are going to deal with each and every individual separately. You have to understand the totality of the symptoms, you have to understand the constitution, you have to understand the miasms, you have to understand that human being, and then your prescription is dependent upon that. Because disease is prior to the prima causa morbi, and that is something more essential which you have to find it out in order to find right remedy. And this is a big difference between two sciences, the allopathy and homeopathy. Allopathy deals with prima causa morbi. That means they used to find it out only a primary superficial cause of the disease. For example, tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, or typhoid is caused by Salmonella typhi, like that. But it is not the basic cause, root cause of the disease. And that's why it is necessary to individualize each and every individual. And individualization is the basis of homeopathic practice. We were there on page number 21. We have finished first two paragraphs and we have learned that homeopathy does not consider any one part as being ill, but considers the manifestations of illness in one part in relation to the whole man. That's what we have finished last time. Let us go ahead with the next paragraph. Medicine ideally has to do with the cure of diseases, the building up of individual, not overlooking proper hygiene and sanitation, but with a deeper view of needs of the individual himself, once again considering his individuality. Probably, homeopathy stresses this view of individual in relation to his environment and circumstances more than any other school of medical thought. For it takes into consideration not only his immediate heritage, but the more subtle and complex burden that is the heritage of long ages of struggling and developing ancestors. Homeopathy seeks to relieve the individual as much as possible from the heavy burden of hereditary tendencies he carries and to guard against increasing this load by enabling his vital energy to provide its own immunity against disease. Homeopathy looks upon the health of the individual as a precious charge and his return to health as almost certain if we but follow the fundamental laws. So, how homeopathy deals with individual? Homeopathy deals with individual taking into consideration the past history, taking into consideration the family history, taking into consideration the present state of the patient, taking into consideration his constitution, all those things. He has used the word, the burden of hereditary tendencies is nothing but the burden of a miasms. The word which we used to use is a miasm. We carry the miasms from the past generations. And these miasms, as far as possible, if patient comes to us, we try to simplify it. We try to relieve that burden of miasm as much as possible, and patient becomes more and more healthy with the help of such a treatment. Here, there is no question of just giving remedy for the present state. You have to take into consideration the whole human being if you are dealing with the chronic diseases. And that's why visualization is the basis or basic thing with which you can approach with the patient. And that for that purpose, you have to understand each and every individual from almost all points of view. And that's why the fundamental laws of homeopathy are very, very essential to grasp. So the law of similars, the law of simplex, the law of minimum dose, the doctrine of vital force, the doctrine of drug proving, doctrine of drug dynamization, doctrine of chronic diseases, all those things are very, very essential to understand. If you follow and understand those fundamental laws and then you practice homeopathy, then you are doing a real practice of homeopathy. Then you are applying homeopathy in a proper manner. And that's why he, in last sentence, he says, homeopathy looks upon the health of the individual as a precious charge and his return to health as almost certain if we but follow the fundamental laws. And then he says, to homeopathy accentuates the study of action of drugs upon healthy human beings with little consideration of their action on lower animals. For homeopathy recognizes that it is only through a knowledge of their action upon the man that we can obtain the correct perception of their applicability in disease. This is a field in which homeopathy leads all other forms of medical thought. For no school of medicine has carried on over such long period of years, and such intensive study of remedy reaction, nor has any such extensive experimental work been done with the results so faithfully recorded by such large group of people, with the results so carefully checked by clinical application. So here homeopathy differs with the rest of the pathy. Homeopathy proves the drugs on healthy human beings, because of which it is possible to gain knowledge about the subjective as well as objective features in the human being. We know exactly what happens after proving the remedy on healthy human being. We know what feelings develops, what sensations develops, what are the modalities, what are the concomitants, what are the dreams, what is the mental state, what is the emotional state. Everything we used to find it out on the basis of human proving. And here, homeopathy goes way ahead than the rest of the pathies to understand the human being, because of which it becomes rather simple to reach to the right remedy and to give a perfect simillimum to the patient. The detailed study, detailed drug proving gives you exact idea of the human nature. And then further he says, this can truly be designated as scientific, for the results have been checked and rechecked and findings applied with unfailing success when the proper principles were followed. So whatever is used over there in the homeopathy, the drugs which we used to use, the 250 years after, if we prove it, it used to produce the same results. It used to act in the similar manner. There is no question of resistance which develops over there with homeopathy. The way homeopathy works is in the similar manner as it used to work in the earlier phases. Because it is the remedy which is given in dynamic doses and not in material form. There is no question of the resistance which develops over there. And years together, the drugs are getting verified again and again clinically when applied to the deceased human being. So this is the verification of proving which we are doing by applying them in the patients. The generally accepted concept of homeopathy is that it is concerned chiefly with the laws of similars. Indeed, the encyclopedia gives us definition of homeopathy as it is a system of medicine based upon law of similars. While for a concentrated definition this might be served, yet there is much more to homeopathy than the law of similars, for it would be very incomplete did it not embrace much more than this. It might better be defined as a system of medicine that is based upon natural laws. So when we define the homeopathy, we used to define it in the similar manner that homeopathy is the system of medicine which is based upon law of similar. Robert says this is the definition which is incomplete definition. It is not a single law on which homeopathy is based. It is based upon 7 cardinal laws. It is based upon all natural laws. And if we understand them, then we can understand the homeopathy, and that is actual the definition of homeopathy. Homeopathy is a medical science which is based upon the fundamental laws, and those laws altogether works in human being. We need to get more complete and comprehensive insight into the scope of these laws. There is a danger of making a fetish of the faith in homeopathy by expecting wonderful results, where a proper understanding of these laws would deter us from attempting to use the homeopathy. Sometimes, even without knowledge of these laws, we obtain wonderful results. It is true, but we often fail by not carrying out the teaching of Hahnemann to remove the cause of the disease, where it is manifestly a mechanical trouble. Again, in the class of diseases where malnutrition results from lack of proper foods, instead of lack of powers of assimilation, homeopathy cannot be expected to take a place of the proper element in the diet. So he is explaining over there that it is not just practicing on the basis of law of similars. Before that, it is necessary what is needed for the patient, what the patient is suffering from. Hahnemann himself have explained that if there is causa occasionalis, first duty of homeopathic physician is to remove that causa occasionalis or maintaining cause, and till it remains, then you have to treat it with homeopathy. Otherwise, you should not. If the patient is having a deficiency of certain things and he is not getting the iron in his diet and he is developing the symptoms, it is not your homeopathic remedy will not work, but unless and until you provide him a proper diet. So Hahnemann have given lot of importance to the diet, regimen, maintaining causes, causa occasionalis, drug diseases, everything he has taken into consideration, and all those matters. He has not said that every time you give the homeopathic remedy. Yes, homeopathic remedy is definitely required if the causa occasionalis is not there, if it is not a product of drug diseases, it is definitely a product of original disease, natural disease, then homeopathic remedy is required. Otherwise, it will not. So he's explaining all those details over there. So homeopathy medicine is not only the thing, we have to take into consideration the every aspect of that human being. On the other hand, in the field of therapeutics, by curative medicine, there is no other absolutely curative system. Here, homeopathic laws reign supreme. Reign म्हणजे राज्य करणे. To confuse the scope of each of these fields makes for misunderstanding and failure. So homeopathy deals with actually a natural dynamic disorders. If there is a mechanical cause, you have to treat it mechanically. If it is a dynamic cause, yes, definitely you have to treat it dynamically. If there is a but there is very severe burning in the eyes with lacrimation and with irritation, and if you see there is foreign body on cornea, your remedy will not remove that foreign body because cause remains to be a mechanical. Unless and until you remove that mechanical cause, the patient will not going to get cured. This is what Hahnemann have said very clearly. So we have to understand exactly what to treat and what not to treat. What exactly the disease is. If we are able to judge that, then definitely we're going to work for it. Homeopathy considers the morbid vital processes in living organisms, which are perceptibly represented by symptoms irrespective of what caused them. Homeopathy is concerned only with disease per se, that is, in its primary functional or dynamic aspect, not in its ultimate and so-called pathological result. With these, we have nothing to do. These are not in any sense the disease, but are the results of disease condition. Therefore, we must distinguish between the primary functional symptoms which represent the morbid process itself and secondary symptoms which represent the pathological end products of the disease. Here he clearly defines what to treat in the patient and what disease is. Whenever the disease has to happen, whenever any dynamic disorder used to happen, it generally produces primary functional symptoms of the case. So patient will come to you with primary functional symptoms. There will be either headache, there will be either anything, any primary symptoms that will be there. And that primary symptom has location, has a sensation, has modalities, has concomitant. And then you can get a clear totality which will be useful for you to treat that patient. If such a patient goes to the allopath, they used to prescribe him a painkiller. Patient goes on consuming it for years together. And after 3 years, he finds it out. He asks the patient to go for investigations again. And now he found that in the brain there is some tumor. But 3 years before, when he has done the MRI, there was no tumor, but he was having the similar symptoms. If he would have been treated with the homeopathic remedy on those primary symptoms or with those functional symptoms, patient would have now developed this pathology. This pathology is the result, end product of the disease. Disease has started 3 years before in the form of dynamics, and it was manifested in the form of primary functional symptoms. When primary functional symptoms remains or they are suppressed for longer time of duration, then the pathology develops. It is always based upon the law of biological development. Functions creates organs. law, it is only three words, so laws. Functions creates the organs. So functions are first, prior, and after functions, there are changes in the cells. The same thing happens when disease has to happen. The first there are functional symptoms, and if it persists for a very long time of period, then only the structural changes happen. So similarly, if you get the disease in the per se phase, disease per se means primary functional manifestation, then you can treat that and you can remove that at that same level, and there is no further development of the disease which happens to be there. And this is the big thing one has to understand. The gross physical pathology, such as we find in gallstones, we do not prescribe for, but we do prescribe for the patient being guided by symptoms which began in the perversion of vital processes, which preceded and accompanied by ultimate development of gallstone. So, gallstone is not the disease, gallstone is the end state of the disease. Disease has started a way back. It is in the primary some functional symptoms. It remains, it has suppressed, or palliated, and ultimately it has, at the time, develops into gallstone. So our aim is not to treat gallstone. Our aim is to find it out what are the primary symptoms of the patients and treat that. That is our aim. Functional symptoms always precede the structural changes. In biology, function creates and develops the organ. This is what is called as the law of biological development. In disease, function, the effort of vital energy to function under the adverse circumstances, precedes and develops the pathological states. For the homeopathic physician, the totality of the functional symptoms of the patient is the disease and constitutes the only perceptible form of disease, therefore, the only basis of curative treatment. Symptoms are outward and visible signs of inward disturbance of vital functions, which will ultimately produce morbid states. And when these symptoms are removed, the disease causes ceases to exist. So he is explaining how the disease develops. Disease develops on the basis of law of biological development. It develops first the functional manifestation. Patient always gets some warning signs. Those are warning signs which doesn't have any pathological tissue cellular change, but still it gives you indication. Patient comes to you off and on with burning in stomach, and which is aggravated by certain things and which is ameliorated by certain things, and it goes on and goes on continuously. This is the way with which it approaches. But after some time, after long period, it used to reflect in the form of some pathology. If you would have treated that with the help of homeopathic medicine, you would have cured that patient at the specific level only. And this is what is needed. We must understand what are the primary functional symptoms of the disease, and you must able to find it out a remedy for that. So disease always expresses through primary functional symptoms, and this is called as disease per se. What latter comes out in the form of cellular change, tissue change, is called as ultimate. That is not a disease, it is the product of the disease. Homeopathy is not concerned with the morbific agents any more than it is with the tangible products or ultimates of the disease. Hahnemann regarded the removal of all obstacles to the cure as absolutely essential before he attempted to proceed to the selection and administration of the remedy, which was homeopathic to the symptoms of the individual case, by which alone the cure is to be accomplished. So what Hahnemann has said, if you understand the patient, if you understand those primary symptoms, functional symptoms, make a totality, find it out a totality, match that totality with the antitype totality of the homeopathic materia medica, from the materia medica remedy, and then give that remedy. First, look after whether there are any obstacles. If there are obstacles, remove those obstacles. And if there are no obstacles, then you go ahead with this and then you can treat that. This is the way with which you can treat and you can achieve the cure. There is no other way. By removing the tumor, you cannot cure the patient. By removing the cyst, you cannot cure the patient because you have removed only the end products of the disease. This was there as it is. Unless and until you remove that disease with the help of homeopathic remedy, you cannot cure the patient. So he is explaining that concept, and then he says, we'll finish one more paragraph in today's session. We thus focus our attention upon the individual and purely functional side of the disease. upon disease itself, where we can perceive the sphere of homeopathy. Thus, from this view, disease is constant change of functions and transformation so long as life lasts. We are here dealing with the realm of the pure dynamics. This field is the field of dynamic, this field of the field of disordered vital energy, and therefore disordered vital expressions and functional changes in the individual patient, irrespective of the name of the disease of its cause, and it's governed by laws of motion and vital realm. It is in this sphere that vital functions acts in the realm of laws of mutual action. Action and reactions are equal and opposite. So what he says over there, homeopathy deals with the deceased human being in at such level. He used to think about the what are the signs and symptoms, what is an external expression of the disease vital force in the form of signs and symptoms, the subjective symptoms as well as objective symptoms, and that is an expression of the disordered energy which is there inside it. That is the only way with which you can understand the person is deceased. And why he is deceased? He is deceased because of the same law, that is the law of mutual action. There is something which acts on the human being, which to which human reacts in a disordered way, and because of which the disease develops. So the disease is developed because of law of mutual action, that is actions and reactions are equal and opposite. Then you have to bring that change at the same dynamic plane. Again, you have to utilize the same law when you give the homeopathic remedy. So your remedy will going to act in the similar manner on the basis of same law if it is dynamic. If it is material, it will not act on that basis. So you have to give the remedy, the similar remedy on the law of mutual action, and that is only a stimulus. The way natural disease has developed, in the similar manner, the artificial disease is produced, and you can cure the patient on this basis. And then the nature's law work. Then there is a weaker dynamic affection is permanently extinguished in the living organism by a stronger one, if latter, while differing in kind, is very similar to its manifestation. That is the nature's law of cure as explained in 26th paragraph, works over there and brings about the cure. So whole homeopathy revolves about all those laws. Out of them, one is very important, which maintains your health, which produces disease, and which is also reflected in the cure. That is the law of mutual action. That is, actions and reactions are equal and opposite. I think on this note, we'll stop today. We'll meet on Monday with further part of this chapter. So that's all for today. Today evening, we're going to learn one more small remedy from fourth year syllabus. A very important remedy in day-to-day homeopathic practice. That is Raulfia serpentina. So that's all for today. Meet at 8:15 with Raulfia serpentina. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Thank you.